Asylum by Christine Lawrence. My mind was muddled, that was all. I wasn't thinking right at all that day. I remember the rain dripping from the trees all along the drive, the smell of the damp leather in the car. My hands were tied. No, handcuffed, the metal cold on my wrists. A nurse in a long white apron, her hair unseen beneath the cap which covered her head. She did not look like an angel. She stood at the top of the steps and didn't reach out or smile to greet me. Beside her, a man, severe in black uniform. It was he who took my arm, and I was escorted in through revolving doors. Doors to hell, I was soon to discover. The officers who brought me to this place were keen to leave. It was a relief to have the metal cuffs removed, a relief which was short-lived, as I was bundled into a vicious-looking straitjacket before being led away down a long corridor to my future. I don't want to remember what happened next, and much of it is forgotten or hidden safely away deep inside some cavern in my mind. Still, sometimes pictures come back to the surface unwelcome. A sound, a smell, a familiar voice or turn of phrase slap me in the face and remind me. At first I was locked in a cell-like room, one of many off a long gallery where the worst of the women spent all of their days. They let me out only at set times, walked me to the bathroom and watched me whilst I used the toilet. They washed me. I had no dignity. I didn't care if I stayed dirty. Didn't care if they watched me or if they laughed at me whilst they washed me. My daily routine was set to their clock. There was nothing left for me, you understand. I'd lost it all when the baby died. I never had a chance to say goodbye, never knew why she died. She just slipped away in the night. The worst part of it was not saying goodbye, not being at her funeral. They all said it was my fault, that I'd been acting strangely and had smothered her in her cradle. I was lucky, they said. Instead of going to the hangman, I was certified insane and brought here, where I'd spend the rest of my days. I would be cared for, they said. Lucky me. So there I was, being cared for by asylum attendants and women dressed as nurses, angels of mercy. They had no mercy, though. No one had any sympathy for a woman who'd killed her only child. Why would they? I had the best of all the modern treatments, of course. When my low mood seemed to be persisting, they took me to the bathhouse, where I was forced to sit in a specially modified bath. I struggled as they pulled down the wooden lid, which had a hole just big enough for my head to fit through. The lid was padlocked. Water began to flow into the bath and continued flowing over me all the time I was in there. I was trapped, unable to free my arms, which were inside the contraption. The female attendant who was watching me laughed even more as I struggled, my knees scraping against the inside of the rough wooden lid. The feeling of panic was overwhelming. It was for my own good. Afterwards, they dressed the cuts on my legs and bound my bleeding hands. Convulsive therapy was a double-edged sword. They told me it would cure me, but at what cost? And why would I want to be cured? That way would only lead to the gallows, surely. They said it wouldn't hurt. It did. They said I would feel better after each treatment. I may have done, but I couldn't remember. What it really did for me was to wipe away all recent memory. I couldn't recall how well or how bad I'd been feeling. I even forgot where I was for a while, which was nice. And the names of those around me sharing this asylum hell. The years passed. Slowly things began to change. Some of the old attendants left to be replaced by others who seemed more understanding of even the most violent of my fellow inmates. I was no longer locked in my room all day. now encouraged instead to mix with the other women in the gallery. I joined their weaving meanderings, pacing the vast space. Sometimes sat at the windows, looking out at the courtyard, and I felt the sun on me from behind the safety of the glass. Occasionally, a group of us were taken out onto the grassy area below and were allowed to walk in the fresh air. Once, a robin sang to me from the branch of a cherry tree. I felt an unfamiliar urge to laugh that day, but I held it in, as I knew they'd say it was madness laughter, and anyway, I had no right to be happy, so I pushed it away. Life went on outside, I suppose. I never knew, because no one ever came to visit. Not even you, my one love and the father of our daughter. I was told one day that I was no longer married. They didn't comment, but I could see in their eyes that they believed that I deserved to lose even you. And so the world turns. I'm old now, and I've never known the growing up of children that I may have had. I've never worried about where they were when it got dark and they hadn't come home yet. The lines on my face are not the lines of a wise grandmother. My life was over the day I was brought here to this asylum. One day these halls will be empty. The walls will echo silence and eventually will crumble to dust. All memories of life here will pass. Then I too will be at peace.